In less than 24 hours, Merrick Garland will begin his confirmation hearings. Of course, he was denied that opportunity when he was nominated for Supreme Court Justice. So nearly 5 years later, he'll get that opportunity as part of his nomination for U.S. Attorney General under President Joe Biden. In his opening statement, Garland plans to talk about where he sees this position going, and also we'll touch a little bit on the country. CNN's Suzanne Malveaux is live for us on Capitol Hill. She has more of that statement which was released. Suzanne, what can we expect?
Erica, we know that the judge is known for his fairness, his even-handedness, and he really goes into this hearing with a great deal of bipartisan support. It is very likely and expected that he will be confirmed as Attorney General, but not first without some tough questions coming his way. It is not surprising that in his opening statements he talks about the importance of the independence of the Justice Department, the integrity of the Justice Department, and especially during this time of racial reckoning, if you will, he harkens back and puts it into historical context, saying one of the first jobs of the Justice Department and the Attorney General was to protect the voting rights of African Americans from the Klan that was essentially threatening them with violence. And so he'll talk about this and he'll say 150 years after the department's founding, battling extremist attacks on our democratic institutions also remains central to its mission. If confirmed, I will supervise the prosecution of white supremacists and others who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, a heinous attack that sought to disrupt a cornerstone of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power to a newly elected government. Erica, also the big question Democrats and Republicans will want to know is what does he do when it comes to the former President Trump? Does he move forward with an investigation and perhaps even pressing criminal charges against Trump, as McConnell had suggested that was the proper venue to do so? The other side as well, Republicans will want to ask him about some of those hot and button issues, the investigations regarding Democrats, the New York Governor Cuomo and his role in terms of reporting the COVID deaths out of nursing homes, and then also the president's son, Hunter Biden. What was his role in terms of tax issues or alleged money laundering? These are the kinds of things that Republicans are going to be asking of him. Democrats looking to see someone who is impartial and that will depoliticize the Justice Department that we had seen in the last 4 years, Erica.
We'll be watching for all of that. Before I let you go, Suzanne, where do we stand in terms of the status of this now long-awaited COVID relief bill?
COVID relief is going to happen tomorrow. We're actually going to see the House Budget Committee take it up, mark it up. It's a huge, massive COVID relief bill. It'll then kick forward to the full House for a vote, potentially by the end of the week. It'll go back and forth, House and Senate. But look for the date, March 14th. That's the hope that they get it to the president's desk before those unemployment benefits that millions of Americans are depending on expire. Erica?
Suzanne Malveaux with the latest for us. Suzanne, thank you. Let's dig in a little deeper. Joining me now, former advisor to 4 presidents and CNN senior political analyst David Gergen is with us, along with staff writer at The New Yorker and CNN Global Affairs analyst Susan Glasser. Good to see both of you. David, as we look at this, and we just learned from Suzanne, in terms of what is expected in Merrick Garland's opening statement, he talks about his experience with the Oklahoma City bombing. The fact, too, that he has said that he will supervise the prosecution of white supremacists. The fact that he is simply acknowledging white supremacy is a big departure. Also talking about the fact that there is not equal justice in this country. Another big departure from what we've just seen under Attorney General Bill Barr.
It's a very significant set of steps back to normality in the Justice Department. And just as we've seen with President Biden, he stayed above the fray on the trial, the impeachment trial here in the last couple of weeks. I think he very intentionally did not want to be seen as part of the decision-making process. And now he's doing the same thing with Garland and the Justice Department. He's saying essentially, this is the nation's Justice Department. It's not my Justice Department. And I think he's very anxious, especially especially on these racial issues when there's so much distrust in minority communities about how the government has handled these issues, how the police have been handled. It's extremely important to have someone like Garland. I think they're fortunate to have him, despite the lingering anger in the Democratic Party about the way Garland was in effect denied his seat, and the Democrats continue to believe that the Republicans stole a seat from them, and they're still very angry about that.
They are, which is why there's a lot being made, Susan, of the fact that this photo alone, right, that we will see, these pictures that we will see of Merrick Garland in that nomination hearing, sitting there, that's an important moment in and of itself.
Well, I do think it's very politically resonant. Certainly tomorrow in Washington, that's what people will be thinking of is, that this is a hearing that came many years after the fact for Merrick Garland, who, of course, was President Obama's choice to serve on the Supreme Court. And in many ways, I think it was a precursor of the bare knuckles politics of the Trump era. And I think for many Democrats, it remains a symbol of the lengths to which Mitch McConnell, then the Senate Majority Leader, now the Minority Leader, was willing to go to basically say might makes right in Washington. And I think there's a lot of people who view that as the prerequisite for some of the norm shattering of the Trump years, right? Donald Trump, without Mitch McConnell, would have just been a guy shouting at the TV. And so I think the Merrick Garland case has assumed really an enormous importance in the recent history of our politics.
I want to get your take, too, on what we saw in terms of foreign affairs. President Biden, announcing this week America is back, saying that allies could trust America again after 4 years of the last administration. And Susan, just the fact that Biden would say that is remarkable. An American president telling our allies, you can trust us. So what does that tell you? What does he have to do, I would say, actually, to prove that? What do we need to see?
Well, that's right. I think in some ways, right, the sort of good words are the easy part here. Just as when Obama came in after a very unpopular George W. Bush in Europe, same thing with Joe Biden and especially our European allies, very strained relations with Donald Trump. The America First president withdrew from multilateral accords. He disdained allies and seemed to relish dealing with adversaries. So in that sense, Biden has done all of the things you might expect to say very quickly out of the gates. No, this is a return to a much more normal, both Republican or Democratic foreign policy. The challenge is that it's not going to be that easy for people to believe, well, why should I make a deal with the United States if there's just going to be a change in 2 years or in 4 years in our foreign policy again? So, for example, Biden has said he wants to rejoin the Iran nuclear deal. Right now, there's a lot of dancing around with the Iranians on just who needs to take the first step there. But there's a serious question as to how much anyone wants to risk a deal with the United States right now.
David, to that point, I mean, how concerning to allies is the uncertainty in the United States? Not only what we've seen over the last 4 years, but really just even what we're seeing here on the ground play out. I mean, in terms of domestic issues, look at Texas.
We've lost so much ground as a nation. Susan was really underscoring that in terms of the trust in America's leadership, the faith that we're a reliable partner. And I think that it's one of the most important things on the Biden agenda. And notably, Erica, he didn't say you can trust us. He said, I want to earn your trust. He knows that we're in a hole on this. And he's moved smartly, going back into Paris, which was really important on the environmental front, rejoining the World Health Organization, very important on the pandemic front, saying we want to restart talks with Iran, very important international relations. And he's also agreed to a 5-year extension of a nuclear agreement with the Russians. So all of that is positive. But the world has changed since he was vice president. For one thing, we went backward with Trump in terms of our relationship with our allies. But very, very importantly, China has become a much more important player in Europe than it was when Joe Biden was vice president. The goods trading in the EU is now bigger with China than it is with the United States. That's a big, big change. So what we've got now is even as Joe Biden reaches out his hand, Macron, the leader of the French, is arguing for what he calls strategic autonomy. He wants to have Europe, especially France, rely much more on itself than on the United States as a partner. Similarly, Chancellor Merkel, who's getting ready to step down, but she's made it clear on a couple of occasions, including this past week, that Germany wants to broaden its vision and its relationships, and Germany is looking to the Pacific as more too. So this is not going to be a quick switch off, switch a light back on. It's going to require a lot of work over time. And Susan really points to something important about whether the president can deliver for the long term. Joe Biden speaks for Joe Biden, but does he speak for the United States when he makes agreements? And I think that is very much in question right now.
Before we let you go, we've seen a number of examples this week of a crisis in leadership here at home, whether it's in Texas, in California, right here in New York State. There are some real questions about accountability. David, how much do you think partisanship has perhaps led to what feels like a lack of accountability at multiple levels, which has allowed many leaders to escape responsibility?
Well, there's certainly the ideology has played a role in this. Texas has prided itself on being very individualistic and not relying upon the U.S. government, keeping the U.S. government the hell out of Texas. And yet it turns out they weren't well prepared for this set of events. There were signs that this was going to happen. Other states had prepared themselves. Texas, relying on its ideology, refused to invest the kind of money that would have prevented and headed off this before it ever occurred. And I think that's true as you look into other states as well.
Susan Glasser, David Gurian, always good to have you both with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.